Hey guys, we have Nicholas Fett here, CTO of Tellor. He'll be doing a talk on inflationary rewards in proof of work systems. And I'll let him take it from here.
Cool. Thanks for the introduction. Hey everyone, can I just get a little quick that you guys can hear me in the chat? And then I'll get started. So can anybody hear me? Cool. Well, I know you can hear me. Anybody else? Anyway, I guess I can thumbs up. Okay, cool. Somebody can hear me. So like they said, my name's Nick Fett, CTO of Tellor. And today what I'm going to be talking about are inflationary rewards in proof of work systems. This is sort of a big topic. Namely, I'm going to be talking about how you can use your own currency, and namely printing your own currency to bootstrap certain things. So whether it's going to be security or even other things. We're going to sort of talk a lot about normal economics and what inflation is and why you would want to print a currency rather than just have a fixed supply. I know a lot of you have heard this term tokenomics. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but I'm not a huge fan of the word. But there is something about having your own currency that allows you to incentivize things, punish behavior, and actually create something that wouldn't exist if you didn't have that. So first, real quick, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about who I am. Like I said, I'm the CTO of Tellor. Tellor is a decentralized oracle on Ethereum. Namely, we provide pricing information for DeFi apps. So say you need the price of gold, the price of Bitcoin, the price of any other cryptocurrency in your smart contract. If you want to do it in a way that's actually decentralized, definitely go look into Tellor. That's actually all I'm going to say about my company, Tellor. I'll go into a little bit kind of how Tellor uses inflationary rewards, but if you guys have actual questions on Tellor, feel free to ask at the end. So before we get kind of into the meat of the topic, let's just get some definitions out of the way. So whenever I talk about inflation, we use the term inflation a little bit differently in the crypto space. Whenever you're talking about inflation in the traditional sense, you're talking about a price level. So namely the price level of the goods in an economy. So if relative to the dollar, so say the US inflation rate is if all the houses, the price of oil, the clothes on your back, if all of those are going up in price, denominated in dollars, then you have inflation in your economy. But sometimes we'll talk about, say you have an inflationary currency, meaning your currency is growing. We're not actually talking about inflation, we're talking about the supply growth rate. So whenever I talk about inflationary rewards, what I'm actually talking about is the supply growth rate of money. So do you have a fixed supply of money, or are you increasing that? Usually whenever people say things like you have a deflationary currency, they'll talk about like Bitcoin as a deflationary currency or something like that. What this means is if you have like a fixed supply and demand is growing for your currency, then prices or the value of your currency is going to go up over time. Meaning the value of your currency is going to be able to buy more things, so prices relative to your currency are actually going to go down. And it's sometimes like if you're an Austrian economist or a very classic liberal free market economist, you can correlate the two. And the reason is let's say you have something, say a house in your system, and you have a certain supply of money, say $10 million in circulation. If you double that supply of money, theoretically, all else being equal, the price of that house will double. But there are a whole lot of confounding factors in this. It's not like you just double the money supply and then instantly all pricing goes up. There's a whole lot of things such as, who gets that money first, how fast it takes the money to sort of get into circulation, what the velocity of money is. We're not really going to get into it, but there is a difference. Just increasing the money supply should increase the price level, but it doesn't always work like that. Okay. So the last definition we're going to talk about, especially in regard to proof of work systems, is seigniorage. Seigniorage is the value of money minus the cost of printing money. So seigniorage is a term that actually comes from back whenever you would make coins. So if you would make a coin that was worth $100, but it would cost you $70 in metals, the seigniorage that the government would actually get on the coin would only be $30. Now, obviously, with a digital money, so say like the Federal Reserve, it's essentially free. You can just add a zero onto somebody's bank account and you mint new currency. So seigniorage is pretty close to 100%. But not all digital currencies have to be like that. So an example of a digital currency with no seigniorage would be like Tether, or the theoretical backed Tellor. The only if you have to put $1 in a bank account before you can issue one Tether, then there is no seigniorage. You're not gaining anything by creating that. But if you only had to put in, say, 50 cents and you printed a Tether, then you would have 50% seigniorage. So, okay. Hope that's all making sense so far. Now, I'm sure you guys would wonder, like, why would anybody ever want to devalue your currencies? You know, especially if you guys are Bitcoiners, or, you know, you come from, like, say, a classical gold standard mentality. Why would somebody want to devalue their currency? And the whole point is it's what's the goal? So, you know, the idea is, you know, the classic reason that the gold standard didn't work, say during depressions or bad times, was if you could get into this thing called the deflationary spiral. So let's say you have some external shock, say some pandemic, and demand starts falling. So people don't want to buy things as much because they think that, you know, everything's going to go to hell. Prices start falling, so the value of money is going up because people are just hoarding it. And as people hoard it, part of the problem is now the value is going up, so people don't want to spend it because the value is going up. And this is, you know, this is actually a problem you see with Bitcoin. I don't want to spend my Bitcoin, I just want to hold my Bitcoin. And so then if more people are holding it and less people are spending it, then it actually goes up in value faster, which causes more people to hold it and less people to spend it. And then it can lead to a cycle. And if your goal is to actually have a currency with people spending it, having this deflation built in it's not really a good thing. So, you know, that's obviously the classic reason if you're doing a money. But if you're not, and you're not running a whole economy with your currency, there are other reasons you would want to devalue, namely that have to do with seigniorage and what you can do with it. So there's a whole lot of things and incentives that you can do whenever you print your own money, whether it's incentivizing growth, whether it's incentivizing security in Bitcoin's case, or say in the current case of DeFi, you can print money to incentivize liquidity. That also works. And those are some of the things that we're going to get into. So how can you think about this inflation whenever you're creating your own cryptocurrency? What, you know, inflation, it's not just free money. There is a reason you don't want to do it, and that you're actually penalizing or taxing holders. So the people who are actually holding your cryptocurrency, they're the ones that lose out here, because if you print more money, then the value of, if you have 10 of something and you make an 11th one, the relative value of each of those 10 goes down. So you can think of inflation as a tax on the holders of one currency. But it can make sense. Being able to tax everyone who broadly holds your currency is a powerful tool, because, you know, like if in the case of Bitcoin, sometimes it can be hard to figure out who to levy a tax on or put a fee on top of. But now it's a really sort of a broad stroke where anyone who's holding your currency is taxed at the exact same rate. So it's not a bad way in the tax. You know, I know a lot of people, taxation is theft, devaluing is theft, but you know what you're getting into if you're holding a currency. And you know, as long as what you're using the tax for is what you actually is a greater benefit than the negative effects of the tax, then if everyone's okay with it and it's not being coerced, it's a good thing. So supply growth for behavior modification. This is, how do you incentivize people to do what they want? whenever we talk about Bitcoin, or namely any cryptocurrency, so whether, Ethereum prints money, most proof of work currencies print money. And the reason they do that is because people mine their cryptocurrencies then. So if you look, Bitcoin has two ways of paying miners. You either have the block reward, which these are inflationary rewards. You're printing money to pay for people, or you have transaction fees. If you look at the history, so this is up to Q3 2019, almost always the block reward is the vast majority of why people are mining these things. So the security doesn't come from the fees. And if you got rid of the inflationary aspect of Bitcoin, the security would go down a whole lot. And I know other people have talked about this, and there's a whole lot of research on this topic. But namely, what it allows you to do is bootstrap things. So really, really early on in Bitcoin, I mean, even here you see 2013, it's really low. But even before that, transaction fees were even a less percentage. And it allows you now, if people believe that Bitcoin is going to be worth something in the future, they can mine it and they can get some Bitcoins. And it's an awesome thing. So now you have people doing something that they wouldn't do otherwise because you're printing money. So you're able to sort of tax the other people holding Bitcoin to pay for the security of the whole system that wouldn't work out. And this is where it comes into whenever you have a cryptocurrency. Being able to print money, especially at the beginning of a project, it allows you to bootstrap things. So it allows you to bootstrap the entire project in the case of Bitcoin, because if you didn't have that security, then Bitcoin wouldn't be around. Now, I know Bitcoin's model it's one that we're all sort of familiar with, but a lot of people may not know, okay, well, how does the actual monetary system work? They print money, but where does it go? How does it get created? We're obviously not paying it to miners, or banks are providing security. And so our system's a little bit more complicated, but we actually have a debt-based monetary system. So the story I like to tell to kind of explain how the debt-based money works is the tale of the 11th round. This is a Bernard Lietaer story if you're interested, but let's say there's an island, and there's 10 people on this island, and they're all just in a barter economy. So one guy has chickens, and he trades them for another guy for a cow, and who trades it to a guy with some seashells, and he trades it to another guy for a back rub or some coconuts. And it's very inefficient, and some very fancy man comes riding on a boat over, and he sees all this inefficiency, and he says, "Oh man, this is awful. We can do a money that's going to work a whole lot better." So he creates 10 circles, and he calls them rounds, and he gives 10 to each of the 10 people. He says, "Use these as money. Now you don't need to pass your things around. Now you have a money." And the people are like, "Yeah, okay, this works," and everything gets better. And he says, "Oh wait, but since this is such a great invention and your lives are going to get so much better, at the end of the year, you guys got to pay me back. Each of you has to give me 11 back." And, a 10% interest rate, they're like, okay, it's going to make our lives better. But the problem is there's 10 people who each got 10 rounds, and they each owe 11 back. It's mathematically impossible for all of them to pay back the 11 rounds. And this is the problem with the debt-based money system whenever you're borrowing at an interest rate, is that the system has to grow. So there's a few ways that they could do this. So first off, if the 10th guy, if he dies, goes bankrupt, the other people can all pay it off. This is how debt-based monies lead to competition. You don't want the other person to do well because you can pay your thing off if the other person goes under. Another way, and kind of the more likely way that governments want, is you add 10 more people the next year. You just keep growing the economy and you get more and more debt. This is why the debt levels will constantly rise in these systems, because it's incentivized to grow things. The first person who gets a newly printed currency is the one who gets the most benefit because the price level hasn't adjusted yet. Who gets the first newly printed dollar in the debt-based money system? the person who takes out debt. So the entire system is incentivized to grow the amount of debt. And this is, it's sort of a different topic, but whenever you're talking about Bitcoin incentivizes security, our current monetary system incentivizes debt. And there's a problem there. Anyway, we're going to go onwards. The biggest thing that you want to understand whenever talking about inflationary rewards is you want to think about what you're rewarding. So in a simple, if you tax something, you get less of it. If you subsidize something, which is what an inflationary reward is, you're going to get more of it. And on a percentage basis, you can see how this works. It's not too complicated. Especially whenever you're talking about inflationary rewards, you're taxing everyone equally who's holding the token of your project, which is a really cool thing to be able to do. So what are some other things you can do with a inflationary currency? Well, I know one topic that comes up a lot in cryptocurrencies is the pre-mine issue. So Bitcoin didn't have a pre-mine. I had to throw this meme up. I like Ethereum, but it's this one was funny. A lot of people don't like pre-mines. They think, basically that's like having a really, really high inflationary rate at the beginning, or conversely, you're printing a whole lot of money right at the beginning to give to the devs, which it can actually be a decent thing, because you can think about Bitcoin's problem. Let's say there was a developer. He helped write Bitcoin's core code early on. Instrumental to Bitcoin, but he didn't mine. He didn't want to mine. For some reason, it wasn't his thing. He was just into writing the code. He would actually get no Bitcoin. None of the protocol would give him any reward. And then some college kid who kicked off a miner, 6 months after launch because he wanted to buy pizza with his Bitcoin or drugs on the dark web, he's a multimillionaire. Is this fair? Probably not. So maybe a little pre-mine's okay. But that said, maybe you can do things differently. So Tellor, for instance, we adopted a model similar to Zcash, or Decred also uses it, which is the dev share. So what we do is we have a mining reward, and then 10% of the mining reward gets paid to the team. We didn't have any pre-mine. We just get 10% of the mining reward, and that's how we fund ourselves. And this is something you can do to have kind of long-term sustainability in your project. So now, instead of using inflationary rewards in Bitcoin just for security, you're also using it for, say, development of the protocol. It's an interesting idea. And then, a lot of people, there's a lot of other things you can sort of use it for. So you can either just blanket give it to some owner address. You can give it to a DAO to vote upon where it goes. You can even do things such as, say, have nonprofit. You could have it go to a DAO for giving away grants for good things. There's a whole lot of things that you can do with these inflationary rewards that can go beyond just security or incentivizing debt, like in the US system. And another thing, so this is one of the big key pieces that you have to understand whenever it comes with proof of work, and why proof of work specifically is a whole lot different than say proof of stake or any, say, centralized model of inflationary rewards. Proof of work's really interesting because you actually get inflationary rewards at cost. So you would expect that, let's say you have a newly printed Bitcoin that's worth $10,000. How much are miners willing to spend to mine this Bitcoin? In like a hyper capitalist economy like crypto is, they're going to be willing to spend $9,999.99. They're going to spend basically the whole thing. They're, if you make a 1 cent profit, somebody's going to do it for, maybe not a 1 cent profit, but miners will do it so that they make a, relative to the risk, just a normalized profit. And this is really important because one big problem with inflationary rewards in early systems, say like in staking systems, is the team's going to print 100 tokens and then they get inflationary rewards. since they're the only people who own the tokens. And then they sell off those tokens. You see this a lot, but part of the problem is that the people who had them earlier get inflationary rewards just for being early, or it'll go to some centralized whitelisted address, and it's not sort of open to anyone. You want the inflationary rewards to go towards doing something. You don't just want it to go towards a specific person, and unless it's a specific cause, say like the dev team or something like that. But just as token holders, make sure you know why the inflationary rewards are going to a certain person, what the distribution is, and what kind of the seniorage is on it, because it's a really important piece. So now I know, now we'll talk shortly, just kind of the last few pieces. How would you design Bitcoin without any inflation? If you wanted to design Bitcoin without any inflation, it would be interesting. A lot of people think, Bitcoin's it has a fixed supply. Well, no, it doesn't. It does not have a fixed supply. Everyone always throws around the 21 million thing, but we're not hitting 21 million for a long time. They print money every 10 minutes. Yes, it halves, but they print money. But if you were going to build it, say, with no inflation, what would you have to do? Well, you'd probably have to do some gigantic pre-mine, because there's no inflation. You don't print from there. So you'd give Satoshi and Mike Hearn and whoever else was there early, you let them split up the 21 million tokens. And then what you would do, I guess, would just be, okay, we're going to, a portion of the transaction fee goes to the miner. Well, this is cool. But what's the problem here? And this goes with, I talked about it earlier. So if you look at, say, the mining reward, and then as it compares to the transaction fees, transaction fees are basically none early on. You don't have any way to bootstrap the system. You sort of if you're relying on Satoshi to be paying it, you're going to be paying these exorbitant fees. And then if you have to pay exorbitant fees to be sending Bitcoin every time, it's never going to take off. It's not the same piece. If you had $30 transaction fees on Bitcoin, it would never be where it is today. Like, of course, now there's $30 transaction fees, but that's different. Early on, you were trying to use it for a currency. Same with Ethereum. You use these inflationary rewards rather than having, such high gas fees early on. If people really early on in Ethereum had to pay the gas fees that we're paying today, $400 to deploy a large contract, it would have never taken off. I wouldn't have used it. And I don't think anybody else would have. The ability to subsidize the security, it's something that's really important. So kind of my last slide here. I think whenever you're talking about people who want a token in their systems, like a lot of times, like the 2017 take was, listen, you don't want a token, like you really have to find some utility or some reason. And, now it's popular, like we need a governance token. That's the purpose for our token. Which is great, like the equity-based tokens are cool as well. But I think there's something also to say is we want a community-based currency that we can use inflationary rewards to bootstrap security or liquidity in our system. And I think as long as if you just say that, like you don't need to go into some of these crazy reasons for having a token. Like, yeah, well, maybe eventually we'll get rid of it. Just say that. And I think it's super cool what you're seeing with DeFi. People are doing it, and so rather than just launching a protocol, so say like a lending protocol, you launch it with a token, and then you pay inflationary rewards to incentivize people to use your token. And this is basically what yield farming is. And it bootstraps usage in the system. Granted, the valuations are completely absurd, but it's really cool because now you get people to do something that they wouldn't have done otherwise solely because you have these inflationary rewards. if you were making them pay for their own liquidity or something like that, it wouldn't work. But the fact that you have inflationary rewards gets them to do something, and that's the difference. I just hope as a kind of DeFi Ethereum space, work on it, I hope we actually just build things that actually matter. The same with any of these pieces, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or DeFi. Whenever you have these inflation rewards, eventually, you can't keep inflating forever because growth can't necessarily be exponential forever. So eventually you have to get actual usage, and I hope what we're actually building makes a difference and causes some things to change, because that's where things are gonna really make a difference. So anyway, thank you for listening, guys. I got one question, but feel free to ask anything right now in the question. So somebody asked, what is your take on modern monetary theory using MMT principles for tokenomics? Super cool. Yeah, I have a friend who is really big on modern monetary theory and using them. I think, yeah, so there's a lot of different pieces of economics you can use. But some of I think just being flexible with it, there's a whole lot of things that you can do. You don't have to do just one thing. Like, what we thought was an excellent idea for a token in 2017 isn't necessarily the case in 2020, and seeing more projects sort of shift as a community. I think just handing it over to the community, trying to get people to do things together as a community, that's what the worthwhile piece is here. Kind of having these, anytime you're looking at these big neoclassical versus, Austrian versus Keynesian economic theories, they usually have to do with these national currencies and dealing with economics. Earlier on, it's just, how do you get people to build cool things and actually use them? And if you can utilize inflation to get people to actually do those things, then even if the tokenomics doesn't make any sense, it's cool. Like, it worked and it was worth it. So that's what I hope people kind of take away from it. So anyway, looks like that's it. Thanks everyone for listening. Sin, I'll pass it back to you. Or not. Okay, but yeah, I guess we'll keep going. Don't know when she's going to take over, but if you guys want to come and look over at Tellor, you guys are welcome anytime. We do talks every Tuesday. It's questions in the question tab. Nice. So we got a question here. Any suggestion of ways to define a monetary policy to issue a token among a community? Yeah, thanks, Philip. No, it's a really good question. The monetary policy should be, I think a lot of it has to do with keeping the community closer. A lot of times you want to keep the speculators out early. I think that's more important, because a big problem with kind of tokens here in the crypto space is, as soon as you issue it and then you get a little bit of traction and you're using it among the people who actually want to use it, then you get a whole bunch of speculators in your system, and the valuation goes really, really high, and then, or at least a whole lot higher than you would have initially thought it would be. And then nobody can afford what the actual purpose of the token is, and the people who were in early, they all go away because they made a whole bunch of money. You want to have people in for the right reasons, and that's almost the harder part among the community. Earlier on, I think, for a community, just having sort of a very transparent, you want something that grows, something that can reward early community members and incentivize them to do things. And you can even have a really high inflation rate, but just making sure that it gets to the people who are actually going to use it and be a good part of your community. That's good. Oh no, I love community currency. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Community Currency Alliance. So So thanks, Daryl. So, all right, Sin.
Cool. Thanks, Nicholas. This was a really great talk. So we're having mild technical issues with our next presentation because one of the speakers is based in China and their VPN isn't working. So we're going to take a 30-minute break and we're going to start at 5:30 Pacific time. And we'll see you guys soon. Thanks, Nicholas. This was great.
Yep. See you.